Good evening, everyone. Gordon Causey again, live from my little corner of southeastern Ontario on my lousy internet connection. It's now 11:34 p.m. I'm a little late. I said I'd go live at 11:30. 11:34 on Saturday, the 10th of September. Going to be Sunday. And just 26 minutes, 25 minutes, and some odd seconds. So I'll get right into it. What I want to talk about. New king, Charles. I touched on this in my last video, but I've since been doing some reading. And I see the potential for more significance than perhaps might first meet the eye. King Charles III is now the head of state for Great Britain and for Canada and New Zealand and Australia. It's actually 15 countries, Great Britain, and 14 members of the Commonwealth realm. Some countries are still part of the Commonwealth, but they're not part of the realm. India, for example, switched to a Republican style of government and did away with the monarchy. Canada, Australia, New Zealand, by contrast, we are still constitutional monarchies. And what that means, from my days studying political science, I already knew this. The head of state in Canada is actually the monarch, Queen Elizabeth when she was alive, and now King Charles. The monarch is the head of state. And what that means in Canada is that no piece of legislation that is brought forward and passed actually becomes law until it receives what is referred to as royal assent. And royal assent in Canada, that function is done by the king. Now it's the king's representative. It used to be the queen's. The king's representative, and that is our governor general. And I apologize, I don't even know who our governor general is right now. We had Julie Payette, and she left. And before that, it was David Johnson. And before that, it was Michael Jean. Before that, it was Adrian Clarkson. I don't know who it is now. But it's typically seen and is, in point of fact, a largely ceremonial role. The monarch has no real authority, power, as it were. However, in times of political crisis, that can change. And I think I'm trying to remember the year, but I think it was 2005 when there was a political crisis that was happening in Australia, and the Governor General, at that time Queen Elizabeth's representative in Australia, actually dismissed a prime minister. And in Canada, and I believe it was sometime around 2006, Stephen Harper had just been elected to a minority government, re-elected to a minority government. And so what that means is that the opposition parties, the Liberals, the Bloc, and the NDP, they had more seats combined than the Conservatives had. The Conservatives had the most seats in our Parliament, more than the Liberals, more than the NDP, and more than the Bloc Québécois. But with those three parties joining forces, they outnumbered the Conservatives. And at that time, Stephen Harper was proposing I believe it was an economic statement, an update. And the Liberals, under the leadership of Stéphane Dion, along with the Bloc and the NDP, signed an agreement, and they were going to topple the Harper government. And they were going to vote no confidence. And when that happens in parliamentary democracy, typically what will happen is the government, then the governor general will dissolve parliament and an election will be called. However, what Stéphane Dion and the leaders of the other two parties at the time, I think it was Jack Layton and Gilles Doucet of the Bloc, they were going to petition the governor general, who at the time was Michaëlle Jean, and they were going to petition her to allow them to form a government with Stéphane Dion as prime minister. And at that point, it would have been the governor general, at that time, the Queen's representative, determining Canada's government. She would have had the option to either dissolve parliament and have an election, or she could have accepted the proposal put forward by Stéphane Dion. So in times of political unease, the monarchy has a certain degree of power. And Charles is now the head of state, not just of Great Britain, but of Canada, New Zealand, Australia, Bahamas, Jamaica, and a number of other countries. I believe it's 14. Great Britain is one, and then there are 14 others. The point is that we know that Charles, it's not a secret by any stretch of the imagination. King Charles is all in. He speaks frequently at the World Economic Forum. He's given speeches. He's very much in on the so-called Great Reset agenda. He's spoken about using the COVID pandemic as an excuse to bring about fundamental and radical changes to the way the world operates. And the potential exists for him to, I see the potential existing for him to, if the right circumstances unfold, for him to exert more than just influence, but actual power. And when you look at the World Economic Forum, and they have what they call their Young Leaders Program, Klaus Schwab has bragged about how through the Young Leaders Program that the World Economic Forum has been able to infiltrate, his word, infiltrate the cabinet tables of countries all over the world. And when you look at Canada, Australia, New Zealand, if you look at those three countries in terms of the harshness of restrictions that were imposed during what I'll call the COVID era, which I don't think is over. I think it's just taken a pause. There's more coming. There is more coming. I'm trying to remember to hashtag all these videos, TATB, hashtag TATB, talking about the Bible. And if you read to the end of the book, or the end of the books, if you read to Revelation, there's more coming. This is just a respite. And, just recently, within the last 2-3 days, New York State, not New York City, but New York State, has declared a disaster emergency over the discovery of polio in wastewater in 3 jurisdictions, not in New York City itself, but in 3 other counties, I believe, have discovered the existence of the polio virus in their wastewater. True, not, who knows, whatever, but it's out there in terms of the messaging. They're messaging that there's polio out there. And I haven't heard any polio cases being reported. I think they've had 1, but what we've seen over the past 2+ years is, under the guise of an emergency, basically our Constitution in Canada, our Charter of Rights and Freedoms, becomes largely null and void. And unfortunately, we do not have a strong constitution in this country. In the United States, their constitution has teeth. And I'm not sure exactly. It's in the Constitution itself. We all know the lines: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It was a movie by Will Smith, The Pursuit of Happiness. And it's one, it's held that men are endowed by their creator with certain inalienable rights, and that among these rights are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So it's written straight in there within the Constitution itself that these rights are given not by men, but by the creator, by God, and that they are inalienable. That means they cannot be abrogated. These are God-given rights. Canada, within the preamble to our Constitution, it says, whereas Canada recognizes the supremacy of God and the rule of law. So we recognize it, but then within the body of the Constitution itself, it says that our rights are not inalienable, but given circumstances, in the case of an emergency, those rights can be abrogated, and we saw that. Freedom of assembly. We've seen freedom of speech under attack. If you don't say the right thing, you can be deplatformed and censored and slandered if you don't go along with a prescribed narrative. You become guilty of what George Orwell used to call in his book 1984 thought crime. Think about the US presidential election in 2020 and go back to 2000 when George W. Bush was elected and defeated Al Gore. There was loads of questioning about the legitimacy of that election was allowed. In 2016, when Donald Trump defeated Hillary Clinton, talking about nefarious deeds and undue influence, and that it was allowed. You were allowed to question the results. In 2020, after that election, you were not allowed to question anymore. You know, I'm no particular fan of Trump, the person. I don't like the man. But with that being said, whether I like him or not is neither here nor there. Everyone went to bed on election night, and he was leading in all the key states by hundreds of thousands of votes. And then you woke up in the morning and all of a sudden, well, we got a bunch of mail-in ballots. Are people allowed to question that? No, you weren't allowed. You were spreading misinformation if you questioned it. That's not the way democracy functions. You don't have to like what I'm saying. You don't have to agree with what I'm saying. And likewise, I don't have to agree with what you say. But in a liberal democracy, and if you look up the meaning of liberal democracy, it doesn't have the pejorative meaning. Liberal doesn't have the pejorative meaning that it does right now. Liberal democracy means holding to inalienable rights, free speech, freedom to assemble, freedom to protest. These are core foundational precepts of Canadian, American, of Western democracy. And now the other point, now there's a new jab out, and I have not been keeping up because as an person, I'm going to look as much into this new jab as I am about a vacation to Bora I'm not going to travel to Bora Bora, so I'm not going to read up on it. I'm not going to get this jab. And so it's not news for me. But I wasn't even aware of the fact. I thought this new updated jab was supposed to be centered on Omicron. Well, I'm hearing Fauci now in some video clips saying that it's targeted toward BA5. I'm like, wow, they got it out that quick. And there have been no human tests whatsoever. They've tested it on a small number of mice. And so things are, I've said it often enough before, and I don't like the winter. My favorite season of the year, we're in it right now, pretty much. We're almost to the fall. Fall is my favorite time of year. And after fall, my favorite time is spring. And then comes summer. And then way down, far down on the list, I like fall a lot. I like spring a good deal. Summer is nice. I can't stand winter. And but with that being said, even given what I'm anticipating happening this winter, I'm anxious for it to get here to see whether or not I'm right. Because my degree in infectious disease and epidemiology come from a Cracker Jack box. I do my reading. I research articles from reputable sources, but so from that and from my own personal experience, and I'm sure most are the same, we know that flu season is that a lot of people get sick. And as to the reasons why, reduced sun, is it because the air is dry and airborne viral aerosols linger in the air for much longer? Is it because our blood vessels contract in the cold weather and restrict the delivery of white disease fighting blood cells? And now we're coming into the fall and winter months when temperatures are going to start falling. So are we going to see a spike up? And this is why I've been exhorting people, whether you're a Christian or not, whether you've read the Bible before or not, find yourself a church, find a faithful church that is gathering, that is not bending the knee to this agenda, that did not require masks or distancing or any of the other things. Now that's difficult because there are not many around, but even the church that I'm attending right now, for the most part, they pretty much went along. But I know that there are individuals, including the leadership within the church, who are well aware of the fact that there's another agenda at play, that this is not centered on health. That's the excuse, as King Charles has said to the World Economic Forum. We have to view this as an opportunity. There's an old line about crisis management, about how if you want to affect serious and real change, you need a crisis. Because absent a crisis, without a crisis, people are resistant to change. The only thing that will get them to change is a crisis. And there have been reams of books written on manufacturing a crisis in order to facilitate a fundamental and dramatic change. Because without a crisis, you cannot do it. In an earlier video, I had someone watching, and they were asking me for the name of a church in the St. Catharines area. I reached out to a trusted source and was given the name of a church in Welland, and it's called Rosedale Church, Rosedale, Rosedale Church in Welland, which is 15-20 minutes. Let me get my dog. Rosedale Church, which is in Welland, which is about 15-20 minutes outside of St. Catharines. Catherine. So I think that's reasonably close. And I have it on good authority that this is a good church. And if it's just straight down, just straight south, heading toward Port Colborne, which is where I was born, incidentally. Oh, my dog. Yeah, so it's just straight down Highway 406 and about 15, 20 minutes outside of St. Catharines. So I hope that gets to the person who was asking me. I don't want to say her name because, quite honestly, I can't remember it. But inshallah, you'll be there tomorrow, and if not tomorrow, well, maybe the week after. They meet at 10 o'clock in the morning, at 10 a.m. You might be surprised to hear me saying inshallah. Inshallah is Arabic. The word for God in Arabic is Allah. In French, it's Dieu. In German, it's Gott. Just another language, and inshallah means God willing. I know a little bit of Arabic, not much. I know inshallah and salam alaikum, which I believe, I know it's a greeting. And I think it's like Christians will say, a pastor will say in the beginning, sometimes, greetings in the name of the Lord, or it might be peace be upon you. The peace of God be upon you. It's a nice thing to say. So where do I see things going? Like I've been saying from the beginning. But like I say, I wish that the winter, I almost wish the winter would get here so that I can either have my suspicions about what I believe is coming, and I do believe it's coming, but until it actually happens, it's just a belief. It's not fact. I don't have a time machine. No one does. Prophecy is hard to get through because it's full of symbolic language, and that's it makes it difficult. Out of the sea, the horsemen, all these visions that John saw in all the visions that John saw when he was exiled in Patmos. Try and put that into easily under, and that was written 2,000 years ago. So I don't know what's going to happen, but I know something's coming, because the agenda at the end of the day, I'll talk a little bit about it. What is the agenda at the end of the day? It's the view is that, and that's promulgated by countless organizations, countless academic, within the halls of academia. They talk about sustainable development. That's the big buzzword now, the UN sustainability goals. Sustainability, and underlying that idea of sustainability is that the path we're on currently is not sustainable. And it's because, and I'm going to put this in biblical terms, the enemy loves to talk about scarcity. God preaches abundance. Satan preaches scarcity. And so the thinking is, or the belief, or what's being promoted is this idea that the planet Earth can only sustain a population over the long term of about 2 billion people. Some put it at 1.9, I call it 2. And right now we're about 8 billion people. So we're 4 times over what the planet can sustain. That's what they're saying. And the only reason we've been able to get up to 8 billion is because the planet had, past tense of the verb, enormous reserves that had been stockpiled, and now we've been tapping into them. We've been depleting the reserves, and so it's not sustainable. The analogy I use is you have $1 million in the bank and it's earning $40,000 a year in interest income, but you're living a lifestyle that costs $100,000 a year. So after getting your 40 grand worth of interest, you then diminish the capital base by another 60,000. So your million in the following year doesn't generate 40,000. Now it generates less. And then you continue to live on 100,000, maybe 110, it goes up. And so that base, that capital base, just with each passing year goes lower and lower, and the amount of interest income being generated each year passes. And what they're projecting is that within, I think they say, by 2030 or in the next 10 years or so, that we're going to run out of clean water and all manner of dire doom and gloom predictions. And at the very pinnacle of this agenda, I think they know it's garbage. But further down the pyramid, people do believe it. They've bought into this notion. And so they're all in, seeing it as a Machiavellian, the end justifying the means. We have to bring down the world's human population significantly, or the human race as a whole is threatened, and the planet is threatened, and wildlife is threatened, the ecology is threatened. So we have to do this. We have to do this. And that's the driving force behind it. The Bible, Jesus preach a different gospel. Jesus preaches, the Bible preaches the good news. And you have to have a horizon beyond that which you can see, which is challenging. Because if you're only see to this, to the end of your mortal life, then you will not find victory. Canada just elected a new, the Conservative Party of Canada just elected a new leader, Pierre Poliev, or Poliev, some say. And he is seen by many as Canada's Donald Trump, maybe, someone who will fight back against this World Economic Forum and everything. I'm neither here nor there. I happen to like Pierre Poliev, at least what I know of him. All I know is his public persona. And what I see of his public persona, generally speaking, I like it. He's very sharp, very well spoken. He's got an intellect, unlike the current Prime Minister of Canada. He won't talk about imaginary juice box, water bottle, disposable thingies that don't exist, the way Justin Trudeau has. He won't say stupid things like how much he admires China, which Justin Trudeau has done. He won't tell Canadians that the budget will balance itself the way Justin Trudeau did. But at the same time, I know there are some who say, well, Pierre Poliev, he's all part of it. He's on the WEF. He's on the World Economic Forum's website. As far as I know, they published a paper that he had put out, and so they had a picture of him on it. I don't know that he's a member. I don't think he is, but what do I know? The proof will be in the pudding. Right now, he's the opposition. He's His Majesty's official opposition. That's how we refer to the leader of the party with the second most seats in our parliament, is the leader of the official opposition, sometimes referred to as Her Majesty's loyal opposition, now His Majesty's. I'd love to do away with this archaic institution of the monarchy, but good luck with that. So I'll end this off by talking about, with everything that's going on in the world and what may be coming, what I believe is coming. There's a hymn that was written by a gentleman by the name of Horatio Spafford, who was from Chicago, 1800s. And he was a prominent citizen, business and landowner, very wealthy. And he had a wife, and they had 4 daughters. And finally, after 4 daughters, and I think this is true for any guy wants a son. And Horatio Spafford finally got a son. And then sadly, his son, at 2 or 3 years of age, died of scarlet fever. Then an event took place called the Great Chicago Fire. I forget what year. I don't know what year it was, in the 1800s. And it's a huge fire, burned Chicago to the ground. And Horatio Spafford lost a lot of his buildings and land holdings. He had businesses operating, and the buildings were destroyed. And during this, there was an evangelist, a Christian evangelist in England by the name of Moody, R.L. Moody. I forget his first name or his initials, but he was conducting revival meetings throughout England, and he invited Horatio Spafford to come over, get away from your troubles, the fire, the loss of your son. Come and drink from the well. So Horatio Spafford booked passage for his wife and his daughters and himself to sail to England. And while before the ship left port, the Chicago Land Commission came knocking on his door, and because all the city of Chicago's land records office had also been destroyed, they had no more physical paper record of the land holdings that people had. Now, Horatio Spafford had his deeds and such, but this is obviously before electricity, before computers, before the modern age. And so they required everyone who had land holdings to go over a series of hearings that were being held over the course of a week or two, and to substantiate their land holdings and to have them reestablished and codified that yes, indeed, you are the owner of these properties. So if he went to England, he risked losing all his business interests. So he sent his wife and his 4 daughters on ahead with plans to join them later. And that ship that his wife and 4 daughters were on was struck by another ship in the Atlantic somewhere, and the ship sank. And Horatio Spafford was in Chicago, and he received a telegram, and it was from his wife, and it said, "Survived alone." His 4 daughters, not only now has his son passed away, but now he's lost his 4 daughters. And he then booked passage and to join his wife in England. And while he was traveling on his ship to England, he was brought up on deck by the captain and notified when they were sailing over the spot where the ship had gone down, where his daughters had lost their lives. And he later said it was at that moment that he wrote the words to a hymn that most Christians will know: "It is well with my soul. When peace like a river attendeth my way, when troubles like sea billows swell, whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul." And it's I never liked the hymn as much as once I heard that story, it hit me like a ton of bricks. How the meaning behind it, for someone to have gone through that kind of horrific turmoil in their life and to still hold firm firmly to the rock, that that says something. So that's the end of my video. It's now Sunday. So again, for the one person who engages with me, I got a couple who come on different times, but hopefully you'll watch this. And the church name is Rosedale Church in Welland. It's at 11 Rosedale Place, and that's in Welland, Ontario. And again, you just jet down Highway 406, and there you are. So God bless everyone. Have a happy and blessed Sunday, and we'll see you again in a few nights. We'll see what else happens in the world, if anything significant, if things kind of go along without too much turmoil, then probably leave this for a bit, might be a week. We'll see what happens. God bless. Good night.